It was 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday evening when billionaire CEO Marcus Crawford heard 5 words that would destroy everything he thought he knew about his family. The rain drummed against the windows of his Manhattan penthouse as he stood in the marble foyer, designer briefcase still in hand. He had returned 3 days early from Singapore, wanting to surprise his children. What he discovered instead was his 7-year-old daughter, Isabella, crouched on the cold kitchen floor, her school dress torn and stained, cradling her infant brother James against her chest. "Please don't hurt us anymore," she whispered into the darkness. Those 5 words stopped Marcus Crawford's world completely. Behind him, the elevator doors sealed shut with a soft hiss. The silence that followed felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. In 3 seconds, the man who commanded boardrooms across 3 continents would learn that the most important battle of his life had been happening right under his marble floors, and he had been losing it for 8 months. The morning had started differently. Marcus had woken at 4:30 a.m. in his Singapore hotel suite, the city lights still glittering beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. His phone showed 17 missed calls from his assistant, but none from home. That should have been the first warning. He had built Crawford Dynamics from nothing, turning a small logistics company into a global empire worth $12 billion. The Wall Street Journal called him the American dream in an Italian suit. But success had a price. Ever since his wife Catherine died in childbirth 8 months ago, Marcus had thrown himself into work like a man trying to outrun grief. Isabella had Catherine's dark hair and quiet intelligence. James had her gentle eyes. Looking at them hurt too much, so Marcus looked away. He told himself they were better off with Victoria, Catherine's former best friend, who had moved in to help after the funeral. Victoria Sterling appeared perfect. Blonde elegant with a master's degree in child psychology from Columbia. She spoke softly, dressed appropriately, and never asked for more than Marcus was willing to give. When she suggested he focus on business while she handled the children, it felt like salvation. Now, standing in his own foyer with rain still dripping from his coat, Marcus realized salvation could sometimes wear a beautiful mask. The house felt different, too quiet. No running footsteps, no laughter echoing from the playroom. Even the air seemed thinner, as if joy itself had been carefully removed and stored somewhere else. Marcus set his briefcase on the marble table, the sound echoing in the vast space. Crystal chandeliers cast shadows that seemed longer than usual. He removed his coat with practiced precision, hanging it in the closet where Catherine's jackets still waited untouched. From somewhere deeper in the house came a sound that made his blood freeze. Crying. Not the normal tears of childhood, but something broken and desperate. A child's voice pleading in the darkness. Marcus moved through the hallway like a man underwater. Each step felt heavy, weighted with 8 months of absence. The Persian rugs muffled his footsteps as he followed the sound toward the kitchen. What he saw there would replay in his mind for the rest of his life. Isabella sat hunched on the cold tile floor, her back pressed against the cabinet. Her school uniform was wrinkled and stained with something that might have been food. Her dark hair hung in tangles around her face, and her small hands shook as she held James against her chest. The infant was crying with the desperate sound of hunger, his tiny fists waving in the air. His diaper looked like it hadn't been changed in hours. "Daddy's home early," Marcus whispered, his voice cracking on the words. Isabella's head snapped up. Her eyes were wide with fear, not joy. She pressed herself harder against the cabinet, as if trying to disappear into the wood. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said quickly, her voice small and panicked. "I was just trying to make James stop crying. I know I'm not supposed to be in here, but he was so hungry and—" Marcus knelt slowly, his expensive suit creasing against the cold floor. "Isabella, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. Where is Victoria?" Isabella's eyes darted toward the stairs. She's getting ready for her date. She said if we made any noise, she would. The little girl's voice trailed off. She would what? Send us away, like she sent away Mrs. Chen. Mrs. Chen had been their housekeeper for 6 years, a gentle woman who spoke to the children in Mandarin and always kept cookies in her apron pocket. Marcus hadn't even known she was gone. When did Mrs. Chen leave? 3 weeks ago. Victoria said we didn't need her anymore because I'm old enough to help with James. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Help! How Isabella shifted James to one arm and rolled up her sleeve. Purple bruises dotted her wrist like fingerprints. Sometimes James cries too much and Victoria gets upset. She says it's my job to keep him quiet because I'm his big sister. The bruises looked fresh. Some were already turning yellow at the edges, meaning they came in layers week after week of careful cruelty. Marcus reached out instinctively, then stopped when Isabella flinched away from his hand. His own daughter was afraid of him. Not because he had ever hurt her, but because he had been gone so long that any adult hand looked dangerous now. Isabella, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You and James are never going to be hurt again. Do you understand? She nodded, but her eyes still held doubt. After 8 months of broken promises from adults, why should she believe him now? From upstairs came the sound of heels clicking across hardwood floors. Victoria's voice drifted down the stairs, light and cheerful. Isabella, darling, I told you to keep James quiet. If I have to come down there? The clicking stopped. Victoria appeared at the top of the staircase elegant in a black cocktail dress, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless. When she saw Marcus, her expression shifted like water, finding a new shape. Marcus, what a wonderful surprise. I didn't expect you until Friday. She descended the stairs with practiced grace, her smile widening with each step. The children have been angels, haven't you, sweethearts? Isabella pressed deeper against the cabinet. Victoria. Marcus stood slowly still, holding James. We need to talk. Of course. Let me just put the children to bed first, and then we can catch up properly. She reached for Isabella, her manicured fingers extending like claws. No. The word came out harder than Marcus intended. The children stay with me tonight. Victoria's smile flickered for just a moment, like a light bulb with a loose wire. Marcus, you must be exhausted from traveling. Why don't you rest, and I'll handle everything like I always do. Like you always do, Marcus repeated quietly. He looked down at Isabella, who was watching this exchange with the careful attention of someone who had learned that adult conversations could determine whether she ate dinner or slept on the floor. Yes, exactly. You focus on your business, and I focus on the children. That's how we've always done it, isn't it? Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, like a door that had been locked for 8 months, suddenly swinging open. No, Victoria, that's not how we're going to do it anymore. The rain outside grew harder, drumming against the windows like fingers tapping out a warning. In the kitchen, surrounded by shadows and secrets, Marcus Crawford finally understood that being a good father wasn't about providing money or safety from a distance. It was about being present when your children whispered, "Please don't hurt us anymore," into the darkness. And for the first time in 8 months, he was listening. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 7 as Marcus carried James upstairs. Isabella's small hand clutched in his free one. Her fingers were ice cold, and she kept glancing back toward the kitchen as if expecting Victoria to follow them. Daddy, Isabella whispered as they climbed the marble staircase. Are you really staying home tonight? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. His 7-year-old daughter had learned not to expect him to stay. Yes, sweetheart, I'm staying. Even if Victoria says you have important work. Even then. In James's nursery, Marcus discovered more evidence of Victoria's careful cruelty. The crib mattress was damp and smelled of unchanged diapers. Empty formula bottles sat on the dresser, their nipples cracked and brown with old milk. In the corner, a baby monitor blinked red, but its companion unit was nowhere to be found. Isabella helped him change James's diaper with the practiced efficiency of a child forced to grow up too fast. Her small hands knew exactly where everything was stored, how to fold the corners properly, how to hold her brother's legs so he wouldn't kick. "Victoria taught me," she explained when she noticed Marcus watching. "She said since I'm the big sister, it's my responsibility when she's busy." "Busy with what?" Isabella's face closed off like a door slamming shut. "Just busy." As Marcus prepared a fresh bottle, he noticed Isabella hovering nearby her stomach, making small rumbling sounds. "When did you eat dinner, sweetheart?" "I had crackers from my lunchbox." "That's not dinner. That's not even a snack." "Victoria says children in other countries don't eat every day, so I shouldn't complain." Marcus felt his hands shake as he tested the formula temperature. 8 months. 8 months of this had been happening while he sat in boardrooms discussing quarterly projections. From downstairs came the sound of Victoria's heels clicking across the foyer, followed by the sharp slam of the front door. Through the nursery window, Marcus watched a black sedan pull away from the curb. Victoria's blonde hair visible in the passenger seat. She had left for her date without a word about when she'd return, leaving 2 small children alone in a house the size of a small hotel. Isabella noticed his expression. She always goes out on Tuesday nights. Sometimes she doesn't come back until morning. "Who takes care of you and James when she's gone?" "I do." Isabella's voice was matter-of-fact, as if 7-year-olds caring for infants was perfectly normal. "I know how to make bottles and change diapers. And if James cries too much, I take him to the storage closet where it's quieter." Marcus set the bottle down with shaking hands. "The storage closet? It's soundproof. Victoria showed me after Mrs. Chen left. She said crying babies give her migraines." The storage closet was in the basement, a windowless room where Marcus kept old files and seasonal decorations. The thought of his children huddled there in the dark while he flew first class to Singapore made him physically sick. His phone buzzed with a text message. "Victoria, emergency at the gallery. Back late. Kids are fine. Don't worry. XOXO." The gallery. Victoria had been telling him for months about her volunteer work at a contemporary art gallery downtown. Fundraising events, she said. Networking with potential clients for his business. Marcus had even written generous checks to support her efforts. Now, looking at his malnourished daughter and the neglected nursery, he wondered if the gallery existed at all. He opened his laptop and typed Victoria's name into a search engine. Her social media profiles showed a different story. Expensive restaurants, exclusive nightclubs, photos with men Marcus didn't recognize. The timestamps showed these outings happened on nights when she was supposedly home caring for his children. In one photo, she wore the diamond bracelet he'd given her for Christmas, raising a champagne glass at a restaurant that charged $300 per person. The caption read, "Living my best life." Some people deserve everything they get. The comment section was filled with responses from friends Marcus had never heard of. "You're so lucky. How did you land such a sweet setup? Getting paid to babysit rich kids and getting the rich boyfriend goals." Marcus screenshotted everything, his lawyer's instincts kicking in, even through his rage. Then he called his head of security. "Robert, I need a complete background check on Victoria Sterling. Everything. Financial records, employment history, personal references. And I need it tonight." "Sir, it's past 9 o'clock. I don't care if it's past midnight. My children's safety depends on this information." While he waited, Marcus carried both children to the master bedroom, the one he had shared with Catherine. Isabella curled up on Catherine's side of the king-size bed, James sleeping peacefully in a portable crib Marcus moved from the nursery. As he tucked Isabella under the covers, she grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. Daddy, when Victoria comes home, please don't let her know we told you things. Why not? Because last time someone complained about her, bad things happened. What kind of bad things? Isabella's voice dropped to a whisper. Mrs. Chen tried to tell you about Victoria when you called home 2 months ago. But Victoria took the phone away and told Mrs. Chen she was fired. Then Mrs. Chen cried and packed her bags, and Victoria said, if I ever told anyone what really happened, she would send me and James to an orphanage where nobody would ever find us. Marcus felt his vision blur with rage. Victoria hadn't just been abusing his children, she had been systematically isolating them, removing anyone who might protect them or report her behavior. His phone rang. Robert's voice was grim. Sir, you're not going to like what I found. Tell me everything. Victoria Sterling isn't her real name. She's Victoria Hayes, and she has a criminal record. 3 previous positions as a nanny or caregiver, all ending in allegations of abuse or theft. She was never prosecuted because the family settled quietly to avoid publicity. Marcus gripped the phone tighter. Go on. Her last employer was a tech executive in Seattle. The man's 4-year-old daughter was hospitalized for malnutrition and dehydration. Victoria disappeared with $30,000 worth of jewelry before charges could be filed. How did she get past our background check? She used fake references and forged documents, professional grade forgeries. This wasn't her first con job. What else? She's been accessing your personal accounts, sir. Small amounts at first, but it's escalated. Over the past 3 months, she's stolen approximately $200,000 through various credit cards and household accounts. She's also been photographing documents in your home office. Marcus looked at his sleeping children, innocent victims of a predator who had worn his dead wife's face to gain access to their lives. Robert, I need you to change all the security codes tonight and call my attorney. We're going to need a court order. As he hung up the phone, Isabella stirred in the bed beside him. Daddy, are you going to send Victoria away? Marcus smoothed her dark hair away from her face, seeing Catherine's gentle features reflected in their daughter's trusting eyes. Yes, sweetheart. Victoria is never going to hurt you again. Isabella nodded and closed her eyes, but Marcus noticed her small hand remained clenched in a fist even in sleep. Some wounds would take longer to heal than others. Outside, rain continued to drum against the windows, but inside the master bedroom, for the first time in 8 months, Marcus Crawford's children slept without fear. Victoria returned at 2:17 a.m., her heels echoing through the marble foyer like gunshots in the silence. Marcus heard her pause at the bottom of the staircase, probably noticing the lights were still on in the master bedroom. He had been awake for hours watching his children sleep and planning his next moves. James stirred occasionally, his small fists relaxing only when he felt the warmth of his father's hand on his back. Isabella mumbled in her sleep words that sounded like apologies. The bedroom door opened with deliberate quietness. Victoria appeared in the doorway, still wearing her black cocktail dress, her makeup slightly smudged. When she saw the children in the master bed, her perfectly composed expression cracked for just a moment. Marcus, what's going on here? He stood, slowly moving away from the bed so their voices wouldn't wake Isabella and James. We need to talk. Now. Victoria's smile returned bright and artificial as stage lighting. Of course, darling. But first, let me get the children back to their proper beds. They shouldn't be sleeping in here. They're staying exactly where they are. Something shifted in Victoria's eyes, like shadows moving behind glass. Marcus, I know you're concerned about them, but you've been away for so long. You don't understand their routines, their needs. I've been caring for them every day while you were building your empire. Is that what you call it? Caring for them? What else would you call it? Victoria moved closer, her perfume mixing with the faint smell of alcohol on her breath. I've sacrificed everything for your children, Marcus. my career, my social life, my chance at having a family of my own. I did it all for you because I loved Catherine, and I love you." Marcus watched her performance with clinical detachment. She was good at this, he realized. Really good. No wonder she had fooled previous families. "Show me your hands," he said quietly. "What?" "Your hands. Show them to me." Victoria held up her hands, palms forward, as if she were surrendering, but Marcus was looking at her fingernails perfectly manicured in pearl pink, and at the small marks on her knuckles where they had pressed into soft skin. "Isabella has bruises on her wrist that match the spacing of your fingers exactly." Victoria's laugh was like breaking glass. "Bruises? Children get bruises all the time, Marcus. Isabella is clumsy, and she's been acting out since you left. Children grieve in different ways. She's been acting out because you've been starving her." "Starving her? That's ridiculous. She's a picky eater, like all children her age. I've been trying to teach her better habits by locking her in the storage closet with her baby brother when he cries." For the first time, Victoria's composure slipped completely. Her face went pale, then flushed, red with anger. "Who told you that that little brat has been filling your head with lies, hasn't she? Children have such active imaginations, especially when they want attention from their absent fathers." "So you're saying Isabella is lying?" "I'm saying she's a troubled child who needs professional help, not indulgence. Maybe if you had been here to provide proper discipline, instead of running away to Singapore every time parenthood got difficult, she wouldn't be so desperate for attention." The words hit their target perfectly. Marcus felt the familiar stab of guilt that had driven him away in the first place. Victoria saw his expression change and pressed her advantage. "I know this is hard to hear, but someone has to tell you the truth. You've been hiding behind your work ever since Catherine died, leaving me to handle everything. The children, the house, the grief you refused to process. And now you come home after abandoning us for 3 months and want to blame me for the problems you created." Marcus felt himself wavering. Victoria's words contained just enough truth to be convincing. He had been absent. He had been running from his grief. He had left his children with a virtual stranger because it was easier than facing their resemblance to Catherine. "Maybe," Victoria continued, stepping closer, "we should talk to a family counselor. Someone objective who can help us all work through these issues together. I'm sure once Isabella gets proper therapy, she'll stop making up these stories." For a moment, Marcus almost believed her. Victoria's version of events was so much easier to accept than the truth that he had failed his children so completely that a predator had moved into their home and tortured them for months while he signed contracts in foreign countries. Then James whimpered in his sleep, and Isabella's small hand reached out instinctively to comfort her brother without waking up. The gesture was so automatic, so practiced, that it told the entire story in a single moment. 7-year-olds don't learn to care for infants unless they're forced to. "Get out," Marcus said quietly. Victoria blinked. "What?" "Pack your things and get out of my house. Tonight." "Marcus, you're not thinking clearly. You're jet-lagged and emotional. Let's talk about this in the morning when you're feeling more rational." "I said get out." Victoria's mask finally dropped completely. Her beautiful features twisted with rage and something much uglier. "You want the truth, Marcus, fine. Here's the truth. Those children are broken goods just like their mother was. Catherine was weak, and she passed that weakness on to them. Isabella is a manipulative little liar who cries every time someone tells her no, and James is a needy brat who never stops screaming. I've been doing you a favor by toughening them up." Marcus took a step toward her, his hands clenched into fists. Victoria saw the movement and smiled coldly. "Go ahead. Hit me. Then I'll call the police and tell them you're an abusive father who abandoned his children and attacked their caregiver when she tried to protect them. Who do you think they'll believe? The grieving single father with anger management issues, or the professional nanny with impeccable credentials? Professional nanny. Is that what you call Victoria Hayes? Con artist with 3 prior arrests? Victoria went very still, for the first time since he'd known her. She looked genuinely surprised. I had you investigated tonight, Marcus continued. I know about Seattle. I know about the forged references. I know about the stolen money. And I know you never worked at any gallery. Victoria's surprise transformed into something much more dangerous. You clever bastard. Catherine always said you were smarter than you looked. Don't say her name. Why not Saint Catherine, the perfect wife and mother? Do you want to know what she really thought about you? Marcus? She used to cry to me about how cold you were, how you cared more about your business than your family. She was planning to leave you before she got pregnant with James. The lie was so vicious, so carefully aimed, that Marcus felt his breath catch. But then he looked at his sleeping children and realized the truth was much simpler. Even if that were true, he said quietly, it doesn't justify what you did to them. Victoria shrugged. They got food and shelter, more than a lot of kids get. You starved them. I taught them discipline. You terrorized them. I prepared them for the real world where Mommy and Daddy aren't always there to fix everything. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her the screenshots from her social media accounts. While you were preparing them for the real world, you were spending my money at restaurants that cost more than most people make in a month. Victoria glanced at the photos and laughed. You're right. I did spend your money. $200,000 of it, actually. And you know what I earned every penny dealing with your damaged children and your dead wife's ghost. The money's already been frozen. The credit cards are canceled. The police have been notified. The police? Victoria's confidence finally wavered. Child abuse, theft, fraud, and whatever other charges my attorneys can think of. You're going to prison, Victoria. The only question is, for how long? Victoria stared at him for a long moment, then began to laugh. It was a horrible sound, like something breaking apart from the inside. Prison? You think I'm afraid of prison? You have no idea what I've survived, Marcus, what I've had to do to get where I am. This was just another job, and you were just another mark. She moved toward the door, then paused, and looked back at Isabella and James sleeping peacefully in the large bed. But just so you know, she said softly, every time they wake up screaming from nightmares, every time they flinch when someone raises their voice, every time they struggle to trust another adult for the rest of their lives, remember that this is your fault. You did this to them by leaving them with me. With that final blow, she was gone, her heels clicking down the stairs and out of their lives forever. Marcus sank into the chair beside the bed, his legs suddenly too weak to hold him. Victoria's last words echoed in his mind because they contained the one truth he couldn't escape. He had failed to protect his children when they needed him most. Isabella stirred in her sleep, and her small voice drifted through the darkness. Daddy, are you still there? I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. Promise you won't leave again. Marcus looked at his children broken and healing in the same breath and made the only promise that mattered. I promise I'm never leaving you again. 3 weeks later, Marcus sat in his lawyer's office reviewing custody papers while Victoria's threats echoed in his mind. She had been arrested at the airport trying to board a flight to Costa Rica with stolen jewelry and falsified documents, but her words about the damage she'd caused haunted every quiet moment. Isabella had stopped eating again. James cried whenever anyone except Marcus held him. Both children woke up screaming from nightmares, and no amount of comfort seemed to help. Dr. Sarah Chen, the child psychologist Marcus had hired, delivered her preliminary assessment with clinical gentleness. The children show classic signs of complex trauma. Isabella has been forced into a caregiver role far beyond her developmental capacity, while James has attachment disruption from inconsistent care. Recovery will take time, patience, and absolute consistency. How much time? Marcus asked. years potentially. Trauma changes the developing brain, but children are remarkably resilient if they feel safe. Safe. The word felt impossible when Isabella still flinched if someone moved too quickly, when James only stopped crying in Marcus's arms. That evening, Marcus found Isabella sitting in Catherine's old study, staring at a framed photograph of her mother holding her as a baby. The little girl's face was streaked with tears. "I miss Mommy," she whispered when she saw him. Marcus sat beside her on the window seat where Catherine used to read bedtime stories. "I miss her too." Victoria said Mommy went away because she didn't love us enough to stay. Marcus felt his chest tighten. "That's not true, sweetheart. Mommy loved you and James more than anything in the world. She died because her body got sick after James was born, not because she wanted to leave us." Isabella nodded, but her eyes held the doubt that abuse plants in young minds. "Daddy, was I bad? Is that why Victoria was mean to us?" The question broke something inside Marcus that he hadn't known could still break. He pulled his daughter close, careful not to hold too tight. "No, Isabella, you were never bad, not even once. Victoria was mean because something was wrong with her, not with you. You and James are perfect exactly as you are. Then why did you leave us with her?" The question Marcus had been dreading came from the lips of his 7-year-old daughter, delivered without accusation, only genuine confusion. Why had Daddy left them with someone who hurt them? "Because," Marcus said slowly, choosing each word carefully, "when Mommy died, I was so sad that I couldn't think straight. I thought if I worked harder and made more money, that would be the best way to take care of you. I was wrong. Were you sad because Mommy died, or because James and I reminded you of her?" The insight from such a young child stole Marcus's breath. Isabella had inherited Catherine's emotional intelligence along with her dark eyes. "Both," he admitted. "Looking at you and James made me miss Mommy so much it hurt. But that was my problem to solve, not yours. I should never have left you with someone I didn't know well enough to trust." Isabella leaned against his shoulder, still small enough to fit perfectly in the curve of his arm. Mrs. Chen used to say that sad grown-ups sometimes make mistakes, but good grown-ups fix them. Mrs. Chen sounds very wise. She was. She used to sing Chinese lullabies and make soup when we were sick. Victoria made her leave because she said Mrs. Chen was too attached to us. Marcus made a mental note to track down Mrs. Chen and offer her a job if she wanted one. "Would you like to see Mrs. Chen again?" Isabella nodded enthusiastically, the first genuine enthusiasm he'd seen from her in weeks. That night, Marcus moved a cot into the children's room and slept there close enough to calm their nightmares, but far enough away that they didn't feel crowded. It was the first full night's sleep any of them had gotten since Victoria left. Over the following weeks, small improvements appeared like flowers after winter. Isabella began eating meals without being coaxed. James smiled when he saw Marcus in the morning. Mrs. Chen returned to work and immediately began healing the damage with patience and traditional Chinese remedies for trauma. But the real breakthrough came 6 weeks later on a Sunday morning when Marcus found Isabella teaching James to stack wooden blocks in the playroom. "See, Jamesy, you put the big ones on the bottom so the tower doesn't fall down, just like how Daddy puts the big love on the bottom of our family so we don't fall down either." Marcus stood in the doorway, tears streaming down his face as he watched his daughter unconsciously process their healing through play. She was going to be okay. They all were. That evening, he called his assistant and gave her an instruction that would change everything. "Cancel all international travel for the next 2 years. If clients want to meet with me, they can come to New York, and change my schedule so I'm home every day by 5 o'clock. Sir, the Singapore expansion will require your presence." "Then the Singapore expansion will have to wait. My children need me more than my business does." For the first time in his adult life, Marcus Crawford chose his family over his empire. and for the first time since Catherine's death, the house felt like home again. 2 years later, Marcus stood in the kitchen making pancakes while Isabella set the table, and James now walking distributed napkins with the serious concentration of a small child given an important job. The transformation was remarkable. Isabella laughed freely now, her dark hair bouncing as she chased James around the dining room table. James babbled, constantly secure in the knowledge that adults would listen and respond to his needs. The house itself had changed too. Marcus had removed most of the formal furniture, replacing marble and crystal with comfortable sofas and child-friendly surfaces. Catherine's photographs were displayed prominently, and Isabella often talked to them as if her mother were still part of their daily lives. "Mommy, look how tall James is getting," she would announce to a framed picture. "And Daddy makes really good pancakes now, even though they're not as good as yours were." Marcus had learned to find joy in these one-sided conversations. Isabella was processing her grief in a healthy way, keeping her mother's memory alive while moving forward with her life. Dr. Chen continued their therapy sessions, but the frequency had decreased from twice weekly to once monthly. The children's trauma responses had faded, gradually replaced by normal childhood concerns, like whether unicorns were real and why vegetables were necessary. Marcus had also changed fundamentally. The driven executive who once worked 18-hour days now coached Isabella's soccer team and never missed James's bedtime routine. His business continued to thrive, but it no longer defined his identity. "The most successful deal I ever closed," he told a reporter from Forbes, "was the one where I negotiated with my children for their forgiveness and trust." Victoria had been sentenced to 8 years in prison for child abuse, fraud, and theft. Marcus tried not to think about her often, but sometimes he wondered if her own childhood had been filled with adults who failed to protect her. The cycle of damage could run deep, but it could also be broken by people willing to choose love over convenience. On this particular Sunday morning, as he flipped pancakes and listened to his children's laughter, Marcus felt a presence he hadn't experienced since Catherine's death. Complete peace. His phone buzzed with work emails, but he ignored them. There would always be another deal to close, another expansion to plan, another opportunity to pursue. But there would never be another chance to watch James take his first steps or hear Isabella's first complete piano recital. "Daddy," Isabella said as she helped James climb into his booster seat, "Mrs. Chen is teaching me to make Mommy's favorite soup. Do you think she would be proud?" Marcus looked at his daughter, now 9 years old and radiant with confidence, then at James, who was babbling happily while trying to eat pancakes with his hands. "I think Mommy is very proud of both of you," he said, "and I think she's proud that we learned how to be a family again." Isabella nodded solemnly, then grinned. "Even when James gets syrup in his hair. Especially then." Later that afternoon, Marcus found a letter waiting on his desk. The return address made his heart skip. It was from Victoria, postmarked from the state penitentiary. For a moment, he considered throwing it away unopened. Then, he remembered Dr. Chen's advice about the importance of facing difficult truths rather than avoiding them. The letter was brief. "Marcus, I want you to know that I never intended for things to go as far as they did. When I started this job, I thought it would be easy money watching rich kids while their father ignored them. I didn't expect to stay long enough for anyone to get attached, but somewhere along the way, watching you build your empire while your children withered away, I got angry. Angry at you for having everything I'd never had. Angry at them for being born into privilege. I'd never know angry at the whole unfair universe that gives some people loving families while others get nothing. I took that anger out on Isabella and James, and I'm sorry for that. Not because I got caught, but because they didn't deserve to pay for my rage at the world. You were right to investigate me. You were right to have me arrested, and you were right to put your children first, even though it took you 8 months to figure that out. I hope they recover from what I did to them. I hope you recover from what you did to them by leaving them with me." and I hope someday you can all forgive the damage that broken people do when they're too hurt to see clearly. Take care of those kids, Marcus. They're lucky to have you, even if it took almost losing them for you to realize they were worth staying for. Victoria. Marcus read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in his desk drawer. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was acknowledgement. And sometimes, acknowledgement was the closest thing to closure that broken situations could provide. That evening, as he tucked Isabella and James into their beds, Isabella asked her usual question. "Daddy, will you still be here when I wake up?" "I'll be here," Marcus promised, as he had every night for 2 years. "I'll always be here." Isabella smiled and closed her eyes, finally secure enough to sleep without fear. Marcus turned off the lights and stood in the hallway, listening to the sound of his children breathing peacefully. Outside, the city hummed with ambition and commerce, the endless pursuit of more that had once defined his entire existence. But inside this house, in these quiet rooms, where love had triumphed over neglect and patience had healed trauma, Marcus Crawford had found something worth more than all the empires he could ever build. He had found his way home, and he was never leaving again.